Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cosmere Connections. We're a collective of book-loving nerds rereading Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere series. From book 1 to book 16 million, we'll be uncovering every secret connection there's to find. Today, we are joined by John,
Hello.
Kay,
I think I just destroyed the biology section.
I'm ReaderWarrior, and today we have our very special guest, C.J. of Cosmere Quandaries.
Hey, everybody.
And today we are going to be covering Elantris Part 2, The Call of Elantris, chapters 44 to 49.
Yeah, and speaking of chapter 44, Serene is worried about Tel Rai's coronation and how bluntly she told Spirit about the death of his king.
It's pretty blunt.
She definitely
take it
gobsmacked
really
him with
hard.
it. He was like, Either he was the most loyal...
Man, he must have really liked Iodin.
right? He was either the most loyal subject or something else is going on here.
What could it be?
She explains what happened a little more, but leaves out her role in events. And Serena can't help but see the sacrifices, not like what he gave up. Playing back in her mind, like her memories of those horrific events. When I was reading my notes, like I had to like straighten that out in my brain. I'm like, she's thinking about his sacrifice. Why did he? No. Oh yeah.
Oh, it was sacrifice.
His literal
Yeah,
sacrifices.
Yeah. So after debating a little bit who else might have become king, Raoden, as Spirit, asks Serene to start over and give as many details as she can. She's impressed by his understanding of the courts and political implications of the things that she tells him. And Raoden is shocked by some of the new events that have happened in recent weeks, particularly Duke... What's his name? Falling in love with Duchess's daughter...
Shootin?
Whatever. Shootin, that's the one.
Falling in love with Andon's daughter, right?
Sure, we'll go with it. Loosely
Tarina.
interchangeable count.
Tarina. That's the daughter's name.
I'm glad. How do you do this without notes? Like, how do you dredge that up without notes?
I don't
I
know how
just
she
pull
does
it
it.
out of my brain.
Jeez.
She's built different.
You must have one of those little like
Built different.
implants from Elon Musk or something where you can like just search it up with your brain.
It is Tarina.
Yep.
When she said it, I knew she was right because it was familiar. But like, I don't know how you did that. So okay. Serene is a little bit amused by the shock of that Spirit shows until he slips about his knowledge about her former marriage contract, and she goes, "How do you know?" And they have this little moment where you can see like the split screen and like Raoden's looking this way and Serene's looking that way, and Raoden totally blinks first.
You told me. No, I didn't. Yeah, I did. Isn't that right, Galadin? I don't know.
Oh, it's like, leave me out of it.
Yeah,
I
right. He's
don't
like,
know.
don't bring me into this. Like, you two are whatever.
Totally just leave some hand. hanging.
Yep.
And then she
Um,
lets it go. She's like, okay, I guess he just knows that.
Yeah, right.
No
She's just
follow-up,
like,
no
Yeah.
pursuit.
okay. She
Don't
gets
look
a
at
little
me, Sully.
suspicious.
I'm not getting involved.
Yeah, right. But she admits her marriages were only politically motivated. But she sees that Spirit is upset by this for some reason, which also should be suspicious.
Now, why on earth would he be upset by that?
The three of them share their sympathy
He
for...
must have been.
Nope, go ahead.
He must have really cared about her marriage to Raoden. I mean, he must have been a really devout follower of Iodin's court.
Well, yeah, I mean, if he was that like dedicated to Iodon, you know, the marriage of his heir must have been hugely important to him as well. Like, that's the only thing I could think of that would possibly. So, They share their sympathy for Serene having fallen to the Shaod at her wedding, but they are worried that there's nothing they can do to stop the coronation of Tel'Rai, and Serene shows them Aishi and how he isn't suffering from the strange effects of the Shaod. I really worded that strangely in my notes. Aishi shows up, and she admits that, or she doesn't tell them that it's her Sion, but it kind of occurs to her that it's strange that he doesn't show the signs of madness that the others do.
I wonder why he doesn't show the signs of madness.
Right?
It's almost like she's not actually under an Elantris.
So Serene gives Raoden Spirit time to think on the things that she's told him while they wait for Aishi to come back with word about the coronation. And Galadon, who has basically been a fly on the wall, he's had like one line this whole chapter, decides to take a nap. Which, of course, you know, just is a fancy literary way for time passes. Aishi shows back up and tells them that, lo and behold, Tel'Rai is king. And that's the end of the chapter.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right? So, anybody got any additions or comments or anything on that other than, you know?
My only one is when she brings up like the Jesker mysteries and Raoden comments about them. I'm surprised Galadin didn't like say anything at all.
You know, that's a good point, because Galadin has chided Raoden for associating the Dula religion with the mysteries previously. It's interesting that he didn't have anything to say to Serene about it.
He didn't have anything to say about it because she wasn't comparing the mysteries to the Dulladen religion. Like in the previous mentions that we've seen where Raoden talks about the mysteries, he's doing it in comparison to the Duladel religion, to the Jesker religion, which is when Galadon vehemently defends it. And it's like, nope, it's different. Those are the mysteries is completely different than the Jesker religion. So I guess in this sense, because she's not comparing it to the Jesker religion, there wouldn't really be a reason necessarily for him to make a comment about it.
Makes sense, but I still feel like for Galadon, whose faith seems to be a big part, for somebody to bring up the cult that seems to be associated with his face, he doesn't immediately try to defend it or to like make a line between the two. I feel like any situation where you bring up the Jesker mysteries, he would get defensive.
I mean, that was kind of my assumption too, but maybe not. Maybe he's more. Maybe he's got a little more Dula in him than he shows.
To me, it's like if I heard somebody saying something nice about like this evil cult thing that I truly believed was a threat, an existential threat, I would say something. But if I just heard somebody saying like, "Oh yeah, the evil cult did evil cult things," I'd be like, "Yeah, I mean, I know. That's what I've been trying to tell you. They're an evil cult that do evil cult things." So I just imagine him like reading and shrugging, like, "What did you expect, Sule?"
That's fair.
True. That's all I got for this chapter.
It's awfully convenient that Serene doesn't get injured or hurt at all, and then doesn't make a comment about how her hurt never goes away.
Well,
Or her
I think
hurt
she
does go away,
did.
I guess.
I think
Last
she
chapter
does.
said.
Yeah.
She made a comment like, "Oh, I think my pain is fading." He's like, "You just think so."
Yeah,
Like,
he said
completely
Yeah, that does sound
dismisses
familiar.
it.
He's like, you're just getting
Yeah.
used to it.
in the previous chapter, he's like, Serene told him that she, like, her pain wasn't like staying the same way, and he just kind of brushed it off as, oh, it's probably just because you're living in New Elantris and you're not having to experience the pain of like being an Elantrian.
That makes
How
sense.
much?
It's just funny that like nobody's following up on anything.
But also,
these little threads.
also in the previous chapter, Rayoden comments on how the fact that her skin hasn't gone the like dull gray yet as well. It still looks the same as when she first came into Elantris.
I wonder how much differently this reveal would be handled if we didn't have that one chapter of Hrathen buying the poison and drinking the poison, where just kind of skip over that and then leave that to flashbacks near the end or something.
Or Hrathen straight up saying, I was worried that the poison wouldn't take effect in time. Like,
well, yeah, I'm saying ignore those parts.
More
and, like...
I think that one is more the like the chapter that you would leave out versus the ones where he was like buying the poison and drinking the poison himself. Like,
but I'm saying the poison is obvious of what it does, because I mean he drinks the poison, he turns into an Elantrian his next chapter. So, like, if we were to completely wipe away all of the poison stuff, would this twist have been obvious, or would we have thought it would have been a
well, but we wouldn't.
God?
But we wouldn't have the foreshadowing for it. The
True.
point of the poison, of him buying the poison, we don't necessarily know what the poison does, but knowing that Hrathen had some type of poison that did something, like, that is the foreshadowing to, oh, this is a fake launch, like a fake Shaod.
Okay, but like,
yeah, it'd be tricky from a writing perspective, but if you didn't keep any of the scenes where he would be thinking about what he had done, I could see it. It'd be a different like way to tell the story. Maybe more powerful. I don't know. It's interesting.
I don't know. I think it would make that scene where Rayoden's thinking to himself about how he could use this same miracle that hasn't happened yet to convince Evan Teod that he needs to convert to get his daughter back. I think it would make it a little awkward. So that scene would probably have to be pulled too. But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit.
Praying, right? Yeah, that's fair. Who would see that scene? Or that would maybe be the reveal. Like he finally monologues afterwards. Like, my plan has come together. I could see that.
I could even have it be two parts. One is just have him like he sends a message to the apothecary, you don't hear what it is. He gets his package, you don't see what's inside. And then you see him summon the one assassin, and you don't, well, we also don't ever see what happens in that. But then maybe when he's like escorting Sereni out, then you reveal like him like asking specifically for poisons, opening the package to see the poison, handing the poison to and like him swap, have it be there. But also you could have the scene with him and Evantio is like, I am now completely ascended in my faith. If you want your daughter saved, I will pray for her and she will heal. And have that be kind of Hrathen putting on this face of, my faith has never been at a greater level.
Yeah.
It always feels
also,
so...
all I can think about is Yzma, the poison
yes,
for Cusco.
We've made that joke probably 3 or 4 times
poison
now.
For Cusco.
You do that really well, by the way.
Poison intended specifically for Cusco. Cusco's poison. Thank you.
It always feels like hubris, though, when we sit here critiquing the master on his works. Like, it feels so awkward.
I don't know.
Anyway, next chapter. No.
Chapter 45. In which Hrathen walks on a wall and talks to a glowing ball. Was not intended to rhyme, but it did. That's what we got.
Hopefully it doesn't take a fall.
In which this is like Hrathen reaches his peak. He's all super excited that the Duke is going to become king, and he knows, he's going to ask me for some more money, but it's going to be fine because I'm ready to give him more money because I know that, eventually his children will believe, and eventually we'll have a whole kingdom that is Derethi. So that's wonderful. He does find the hole where the Galadon and Raiden had gotten out of before, and he's like, we'll just leave that. I mean, why would I need to mess with that? Like, it's fine. It's fine. There's definitely nothing wrong with that. No reason to be worried about that at all. Because they can leave. Where would they go? He does have a little worried about Serene moment, hoping to see her as he walks upon the wall, David and Bathsheba style almost. A little bit of that, I don't know, like Jafar Jasmine vibe of like, what's going on here? Like, what are you doing? And then Seon from King Teo comes over and agrees that if Serene is healed, he will convert. And Hrathen has his anime villain, like, yes, all of my plans have come together. This is the pinnacle of success. Nothing bad will ever happen to me for the rest of this book. Moment.
I was 4 parallel universes ahead of you.
You have fallen for my trap card, Kaiba. That's what I got for chapter 45. I think that's pretty much everything. What do y'all see anything else? Any thoughts?
No, that's pretty good. I think you nailed the essence of it.
It is just really interesting to see him like gloating at the top of his pinnacle. He's like, I've got it. This is me. I've won. I'll take a potato chip and I'll eat it. It is not good.
He's very like convinced that like everything is like set now.
I mean, his greatest enemy, Serene, is stuck in Elantris. Deloff is under control. The king is supposedly going to swear fealty to him. And now he's got Teod, which is the opposite religion, now willing to surrender to him. And all of it without, like, any blood spilled.
No. He's pretty the hero, impressive. Guys. He's such a good guy.
He thinks so.
Well, I would argue that he is. He's just the good guy on the other team.
He's certainly the best guy on the other team.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wonder how boring of a story would it have been if, like, he sees Serene, he's like, hey, listen, I've got this letter from the Worm. It says if I don't convince everybody to commit to Dareth,
yeah.
Dareth, they're gonna kill everybody. Can you help me with this? And Serene would be like, oh, absolutely.
No, she wouldn't.
Them working together.
You get, because, I mean, she would definitely try to come up with a solution, but she would absolutely not assist with converting, because she is a true believer, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah. So. Well, it also, the problem is it's not just conversion, it's also immediate subservience to even the lowliest priest of the Derethi, right? So, like, that's the crazy part, is like, yeah, sure, we could all just say we believe, but now also if we disobey, Wern sends his armies and conquers us anyway. So it's like, well, we really are swearing fealty to another country at that point, which is not a thing people do in medieval times.
Thankfully.
Medieval.
More so, thankfully, nowadays. Okay. Anything else for 45?
Not that comes to mind.
Okay. 46. So, Rayoden. Even though he had become a horrible person, Rayoden couldn't help but feel remorse for his father. He remembers the Iadon of years before, the one that was respectable and loved, but his true distractionary comfort lies in Serene and the Aeons. But Rayoden's true distractionary comfort. He spent all of his time now focused on them, as New Elantris seemed to run smoothly by itself. Serene is focused on the library's books and is surprised how there seems to be no information on modern Fjordell. Rayoden rationalized this by saying how unattached the Elantrians had become and how little they cared, since they assumed they were naturally superior. Galadon enters and says Hrathen is back, screaming for Yadeth to heal them. Suspicious, but says nothing, and all three of them continue to focus on their work. After a few minutes, Raoden notices that Sereni was watching him draw Aeon Ihi, which means fire. She asks why he keeps drawing it, and Raoden says it needs to be perfect or it won't work. No matter how exact it was, though, Raoden couldn't help but feel that something was missing in the pattern. Sereni offhandedly remarks maybe something's wrong with the land. After all, the base Aeon is basically a drawing of Erelon. Galadon quickly grabs a map, and they see that Aeon, literally Aeon, perfectly overlays Erelon's coast, mountainside, and lake. This was a huge clue to solving the secret. Raoden turns back to Sereni and watches as her spots fade and she returns to normal, minus the hair. He curses and pulls her outside. Quick jump. Sereni was confused as Raoden takes her to the gate, and he explains that she was never an Elantrian, and this was all a trick by Horathan. She tries to stay, and Raoden does his best to convince her to leave. It's only when he lies about them needing food, needing help from the outside to survive, that she agrees to go. Raoden watches as she is pulled through the gate under the Gjorn's orders. End of chapter.
Sad.
Dun, dun, dun. So
Sereni is like, she like doesn't want to leave. She's like, this is the first time I have been happy in a way. Like, I don't know if happy is necessarily the right word.
but felt accepted.
Yeah, felt accepted for exactly who she is.
With people that she could see as like her equals.
Yeah.
Because it's not like she wasn't accepted by like the rest of the group in Erelon.
But they never
But she was
but she didn't feel like they saw her as their equal. Like,
exactly.
she continually put herself in a position of power above them, like as the leader of the group, as the one in charge. So like that separated her.
He couldn't rise from his slumber.
I glanced over at Brandon's annotations for this chapter, and it reminded, or it told me something I had never known before, which was that in the original version of this, like Raoden's twin brother attacks the city with an army, and she thinks it's Raoden out there with the army. And so in this sequence, she is being torn between Raoden and Spirit, and she ultimately chooses to stay with Spirit instead of going to Raoden, who she believes is Raoden. It's like it's this weird, she chooses Raoden over the idea of Raoden.
Over Raoden?
I can only assume
Exactly.
that there were other places where this mysterious twin brother must have been mentioned in the original manuscript.
There were a couple places.
They
not many. He cut out the twin brother because it was like he realized it didn't really make a whole lot of sense and it didn't really add a whole lot to the story. Like, we already have that brother pair with Eventio and Kyain. Yeah.
Guy with K's and I's.
Yeah, there wasn't really much build up to it, and I think, if I remember correctly, the twin brother was like crazy as well.
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of glad it got cut out. It would have been really unnecessary.
Yeah. There's no real reason to have it in there.
I went back and looked at the map for like the first time I've ever looked at like the actual map of Erelon, and it actually looks like Aeon, and I lost my mind. It actually looks like it. There's the top line, there's the curve line, there's the dot.
Yep.
I'm more intrigued by some of those other ones where it's like, what was the X that represented like
we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there in a little bit. I want you to hold those thoughts for just a little bit longer until we get to my chapter, and we will talk about it because I am ready.
Oh boy, maybe I should have brushed up a little more on the other chapters. Sounds like this is gonna be a thing.
Audio only listeners. Hopefully you have the physical book. It's like the first page.
Depending on
that.
your printing.
Yeah,
Yeah, depending upon printing.
one of the first pages.
The first page after the foreword.
Have y'all ever seen Brandon's first drawing of the Elantrian map?
Oh, I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
God, that's hilarious.
Isn't that great?
That is rough.
Yep. This is brandonsanderson.com/pages/Elantris map progression. And it is like MS Paint, red splotch, brown for mountains,
Yeah.
with like triangles, green for forest. And there's like a blue lake, I guess. Who knows?
No, I think the blue is supposed to be Teod, maybe?
Maybe.
And then the red is so I think the
Teod.
red is Erelon. I think the
Erelon
blue
was
is
kind of
Teod,
bulged.
and
Looks like the green might
think
be
the green is
Fjordan's
Fjordell.
Green might be
Yeah.
Fjorda?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because there's another map below it that's a little bit more like descriptive. Oh man.
But even that shit, I have to wonder how much Brandon had to talk with the visual artist that was making the map and say like, okay, it needs to be specifically looking like this. We're gonna make a whole alphabet basically of all of these characters. They all need to sort of resemble that. I wonder how much of the conversation of the book went into all of that.
Yeah, have y'all talked about the original name for Elantris?
I think
Yes, briefly during the forward.
Okay.
Adonis.
The
Right.
Adonis, yeah.
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 How Brandon didn't realize, oh, that's an actual thing.
It's like my favorite brand. Every time somebody goes like deep diving on a Brandon Sanderson theory of like, let's connect all the dots, I'm like, don't forget the time when he didn't know that Adonis was a Greek myth. There are times when he's just doing a thing because he thinks it sounds cool.
Yup.
That's when I remember Rick Riordan, when he was writing the first Percy Jackson book, wanted to title the first one "The Son of Poseidon," not realize the first half of that book was all a question leading up to that point.
That's funny.
Percy, I wonder who my dad is. Looks at the cover.
Well, yeah. I mean, that reminds me of like the very first book in the Wheel of Time series where you're like, I wonder who the Dragon Reborn is. It can't be the only main character that we have a viewpoint from. It's like, I wonder who it is.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else for chapter 46?
She helps him with Aeons.
Okay, great
to get
talk.
into Kay's chapter, but she starts that process of like, hey boys, maybe you should pay attention to the shape that you're drawing.
Hey, maybe you should
True.
have paid attention in class. Clearly,
Very
you
much
didn't
so.
have a good tutor if they didn't tell you that the Aeons were in the shape of.
Okay.
So, moving along to chapter 47. Fingers crossed. Hrathen brings Serene out of Elantris now that she appears healed and tells her that Yadith has healed her. Even her father thinks so. Serene is incensed by this and claims the lie of Hrathen's words. Hrathen retorts using an in-world metaphor about birds making nests in the sand or something. Yandel pulls a sword on Hrathen, but Hrathen is no mere priest and makes a show of disarming and then returning the sword, showing how entirely unthreatened he is by those kinds of violent gestures. Hrathen leaves, and Serene calls a meeting of their allies to try and stop Telrai from giving Aerolon over to Wyrn. Kainin holds the meeting at his house, as usual, and Serene eats like Goku after a hard day of training. I told you there was an anime reference in my notes.
Yes.
There it is.
um, they make jokes about it for a while, but eventually Sereni declares herself full, and they discuss how Wraithen likely pulled the trick to make himself and Sereni look Elantrian for exactly the same amount of time. Coincidence? No one thinks so.
Think not.
Sereni regrets the loss of her hair, but the men find a wig for her. And she asks after Ahane, who has gone to talk to Telrai, and see how agreeable he will be to work with, since as he is now a fixture of the state. Sereni suggests there might be things they can still do to resist Telrai, and by extension, Wyrn. The menfolk are concerned about actively attempting to remove Telrai, but Sereni argues that both he and the late not-so-great Aendan did nothing for the people, while they might appeal to them and keep the populace on their side and support their pick for the throne. They agree to sleep on it, and Royale jokes about not being betrothed to Sereni anymore before leaving. Sereni laments her engagements before she begs Kaiinen for a place to live. She goes to bed and calls her father using a she, but the conversation leaves her feeling dejected and feeling a little hopeless. It would not be long before Teod converts, not just to get Sereni out of Elantris, but also to protect the country from the Fjordell armies. Sereni is nonetheless determined to keep Aerolon free, since it is now the last remaining bastion of Shu Kessig.
Of Shukorath.
Which one is Kessig?
Kessig is
father
the
one.
The
one
parent
that...
religion? Damn, I had... One of these days I'll get them right.
Yeah.
Korath. Shu Korath. Nike, Adidas, whatever.
I want to say, first of all, we gotta remember throughout this entire chapter, Sereni is wearing like bright neon green, orange, polka dot, the ugliest colors imaginable.
Well, at least at the beginning. By the time she gets back
At
to
least at the
Kaiinen's,
beginning.
she could have had a change of clothes. There's a little bit of a time jump.
Well,
No,
but
because
they
she only
did
specifically
say...
changes into the nightgown because it's Kyan's wife's nightgown. Everything else of hers was burned.
Yeah, I was.
Oh,
they did
yeah,
say
you're right.
All of
You're
her,
right.
Yeah, all of her clothing was burned, so all of her
rude.
belongings were burned,
Yeah. Purged and
incinerated.
I love that Eondel only really goes on the attack when Harathan kind of mocks Shu Korath.
Hmm.
He's very devout.
And we've seen him be devout. Really appreciated that.
Yeah, that's right. Isn't
I
he
was
the
gonna
one who
comment,
like
I was-
chided Sereni and the cousin
Luke
Hell?
Luke Hell for making fun of the high priest guy?
Yep, he did.
That okay.
the patriarch.
Patriarch. That's the title.
Will you please not talk about this? I was gonna remark Sereni eating all that food is pretty much me whenever I come back home from the UK.
Just
Portion
inhaling
sizes here are so
everything in sight.
small. Yes.
Kirby.
Yep, very much Kirby.
Pretty much.
And she goes through like
Like
4
Cayenne's
full plates of food.
Yep.
And they're like, don't Elantrians not have to eat? And she's like, technically I was never an Elantrian. And they're like, well, okay. Elantrians don't have to eat, but I guess since you weren't.
Yeah, I mean, she was probably on nearly starvation rations that whole time, right? Because it's double rations for an Elantrian, but still.
But they also only had one meal a day.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
And
God.
Raoden had even commented in, I believe, my chapter that he starts off with bigger rations and then eases people off as they get used to Elantris.
Yeah.
Well,
So
and
considering she was only in there for 5 days.
he was also sneaking her extra food, I think.
Yes, because
he
she
was
was a
giving her
newer
his food.
Elantrian.
Okay, yeah.
Because she's a newer Elantrian, that's what he does for the newer Elantrians, is that he starts them off with more food and then weans them slowly off of it because he was saying that it makes the transition easier.
I would have really found it funny if they're like, here, we found this wig right outside of Elantris. It's got property of Sheor written on the inside, but it's fine.
Yikes.
Nice.
I love in Tio they only respect the government / its leaders when it actually cares for its citizens. This really is a fantasy.
It's funny.
Thank you. I try. And my last comment is she makes Serene comments so much that her father won't do it because he's an honorable man, and he won't just undo it because she says. If there was proof that she was never really a Lantern and that it was all a trick, would he then renege on his promise?
No, because that would be him going back on his word, which is the issue, is that he's not going to go back on his word, even if he doesn't necessarily believe that like Jadith is the one who like healed her, but he's still not going to go back on his word of saying that he was going to do this.
It really is just he didn't have a good lawyer there. They did not make a good contract, because I think the wording was "come out of there healed." It's like technically she came out of there healed.
Yeah.
He just didn't specify from what, under what conditions.
Well,
we just get some lawyers in there. Get
We
some
know from the
Skywalkers
previous
involved.
section of the book that Evan Teod is not a good negotiator to begin with.
Yeah.
And yet, anyway, he jumped in both feet with Raythan, who is a shrewd person and quite a skilled persuader of people.
Head first, eyes closed, can't lose.
If my daughter returns safely from that city, I will convert to Shudareth. Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
technically, Harathan did keep his word.
And as everyone knows, technically correct is the best kind of correct.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I think that pretty much sums it up for 47. Do we have a 48?
Yep. I have
Going
48
once.
as well.
Going twice.
I have a 48.
So
I learned from my daughter that it's the best number because 4 and 8 are the two best numbers together. So
Good logical reasoning.
I
Love
know,
it.
I know. She loves even numbers right now, and like 48 is like one of the
I
most
mean,
even numbers.
That's fair. Even numbers are in fact the best numbers. So she is correct in her thoughts.
5 is the best number.
Incorrect
Ooh,
because
a
5 is
7,
odd.
7. 7's a good number.
Ooh.
I like
Ooh.
7.
No, see, 8 is. I also like the number 8 because you can split it evenly in. It's very symmetrical. It's just a nice number.
Turn it on its side and it makes
Infinity.
Infinity. Yep. So, 48 brings us from the peak of Harathan's might crashing downward. He gets to keep Teod, but it does not go well for him in this chapter. He is forced to wait out in a room with a bunch of nobles, and he's very frustrated by that. Once he is finally let in a little bit earlier than the rest of the nobles, so he's a little happy about that. He walks in and he's like, "Oh my gosh, you're just this messy room now. Aedan had a much better room than you," whatever that means. He begins to negotiate with King Tel Rai, and he's all prepared to be faux angry at King Tel Rai for demanding more money. And then Tel Rai is like, "Actually, the thing that I want, you can't give me, and I've already gone above your head to the person who can give it to me, because I want to be like you. I want to be like you." Because he has seen through the problem of converting to Shudareth, because he's like, dude, if I convert, then any like priest could tell me what to do, and that would make the king below a priest. We're not going to do that. So, similarly to Hrathen's deal with Teod, he has kept his deal. He has expressed his thankfulness to Hrathen for the money that helped put him on the throne, and never explicitly promised to convert, and is now willing to convert only if he is made a Yorn like our friend Hrathen, and Hrathen is thinking like, uh-oh, Wyrn is gonna start doing bad stuff to this city because you don't make demands of Wyrn directly. That's not a thing you do. Boo. It's not a good time. Hrathen is now scared. And I'm sure nothing bad will happen to Hrathen for the rest of the book.
No, absolutely
not at all. Although that is my favorite Disney song, so
it's a good one.
It is.
Go the distance. S-Class. But I love that Telrai has like rechanged the palace and like has covered it in cushions, and Hrathen's like, I need a stone bench to sit on, or I am going to stand.
Yeah.
In like 5 days. This was quite the priority.
I like to think that he just had the Elantris city guard grab all the crap out of his mansion and drag it to the palace.
Probably.
Also, it's like, less than 5 days. It's been less than 5 days because he spent the first like 2 days like consolidating power before taking the throne. Like,
well, I mean, okay, and I'm comparing this to like modern day people with like trucks and this is their job. But like in the White House, typically from the moment the president leaves and the next president has his inauguration, like people go in and they completely strip that thing down and replace it with everything the next president and first lady want, or first gentleman, or first they them, whatever might happen in the future.
First bubblegum crisis.
First person.
Yes. What's that? Would that be with the non-binary?
I don't know.
What would that be?
We'll figure it out when we get there.
When we get there. And we will get there. Because America is a land of progress.
No comment.
Hopefully. We'll see in 2 weeks.
Progress does not have to be forward.
You are not wrong.
Oh.
You are not wrong.
Chapter 49.
Okay. Yay! Finally, I get to do my chapter. This is so exciting. I definitely wanted this chapter a lot, and so I grabbed it very early when we were picking chapters.
Did you actually do notes for it?
No, absolutely not. Who did you take me for?
This is our first time even
Mortal,
looking at the pages,
mortal.
man.
That's what I take you for. One day it will be proven.
Fools.
Evan Page, third word, go. What's it say?
So we are with the Raoden, this Raoden chapter, and Raoden is in the library, and he can't get out of his head what Sereni said about the fact that the Aeons are in the shape of Erelon, are in the shape of the land, and he is looking at all of the Aeons that he knows, and he's like, oh my gosh, like, yes, like the one of them, the one that says water has little like squiggly lines to represent water. The one that is wood has circles to represent the forest. There's ones that have an extra line to show the line between Erelon and Duladel, and he's like, oh my gosh, like, how did I not notice this before? And so
Eno for water, Dai for wood.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like trying to read their names. So so he's in the library, and he is just staring at the map, at this map of Erelon that he has that was left over from the Elantrian days, and he's like, what is different? What is different about this map. There's got to be something different. Like he's like the slant, the coastline, the slant of the mountain, like none of that has changed because if I try to change the slant, the lines won't be drawn. So what is different? He's like, what is different? Are there any more major rivers? Are there any new major landforms? And he's just racking his brain trying to figure out what the hell is different. And it eventually comes to him. The chasm.
Dun
So
dun dun.
he at first tries to draw the chasm line, but he just like kind of like puts it in the general area where he thinks it should be, and it doesn't work because he didn't put it in the exact place that it needed to be. So he tries it again, and he gets it, and it works. And this rush of power hits him, burns into him, and releases the. He feels that release of power of the door coming out of him, and his Aeon, which was probably not the best Aeon to be trying this with, which is the Aeon for fire,
Eehee.
and and it explodes with power and destroys the biology section. Hence my quote from earlier, which I just thought was a funny quote from this section.
No.
I'm just sitting here trying not to make Viagra jokes.
So, and he accidentally destroys that, and it ends up, it's a huge burst of power, and so they have figured out, Rayoden has figured out what is wrong with the Aeons. And but something still isn't quite right, because Rayoden tries a couple more Aeons. He tries a couple more Aeon Ashy, because he's like, I'm gonna do something safer this time and not fire. And he chooses Aeon Ashy to draw, and it's not as bright as it's supposed to be. It should be brighter. And he tries adding modifiers, and it still isn't as bright as it is supposed to be. So clearly there's something's still not right with the Aeons. Also, Galadon and him still look like their Sheod forms. They still have black spotches, their skin is still dull, their pains are still there. Like nothing has changed in that sense. So something's still not quite right. They're not sure exactly what's wrong. Maybe they're still missing a line in the Aeon. Maybe they're missing something else. They don't know. They do try a couple different things, and they find out that Aeons that are targeted at an Elantrian won't work. But if you target like their clones, then it will work. And the chapter ends with Rayoden deciding to try this really big, complicated Aeon. It's so complicated that he has to like move to the sides to like finish drawing it. And it is a illusion Aeon. And he is able to cast an illusion on himself to make him look normal. And that's where the chapter ends.
What are they going to do that for?
You know, I can't draw well when I'm trying to draw the thing I'm actually drawing. Can you imagine trying to draw something using a pictogram of a description of what you're trying to draw?
And it needs to be absolutely perfect. Like, if you look at Aeon Eno, which is the water, it is like and if you go to the back of the book, like, it is the river. It is like squiggly up, down. Like, it's not a perfect line. It is like, can you imagine having to do that?
That's what I'm saying. And to get it right on the first try, like, this guy is a freaking wizard, literally.
Yeah, literally, very literally.
Although
Um,
I have to be happy like he wasn't accidentally doing like Aeon Shio, which is death, and just like the first
Oh
one he does,
god.
and just bam, nuke drops.
I
I
mean,
mean,
there is
why
an
would you do
alternate
that though?
world where there is an alternate world that fire just burns them to a crisp, and they're like, "Oh, well, we're skeletons now."
Can you imagine how much more complicated it would have been though if he actually had been doing the Sion for light when the explosion happened? I mean, him and Galadon were staring right at it. They would both be permanently blind. Like, book over.
Yeah.
There would suddenly a sky beam goes up, and everybody's like, "What the heck is happening? They've returned."
Right? Everyone knows about New Elantris now.
But there are some Aeons that just going through this list, and I'm sure there are others on like the Coppermind or other places, but like they don't make sense. Like I don't even know how like Aeon Hope or Unity or North, like how some of them would even work
Or
as a
Majesty.
power or Majesty or
But they're not just. Here's the thing: is that they're not just power. They're also the writing system. They're also a written language.
Yeah, I suppose it's possible that not every Aeon in the language can be drawn as an Aeon for power. Or maybe some of them are like modifiers. Like maybe you modify Aeon Fire with Aeon Majesty and you get like a Wreathing Crown of Flames or something. You know, who knows?
that would be cool. Or like Aeon Sheo, which is the transform with Aeon Dio, which is gold and it or metal, and it turns it into metal, whatever you're doing it on, like soul casting.
What's that?
I'm being vague.
Yeah.
I will say the metal one that he had commented on about all the little dots. I think those are ore deposits.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
That would make
The one
sense.
for. Yeah.
I like that.
Or mines,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
which would be where an ore deposit is. Duh.
Okay. So I also was kind of wondering, this could be a spoiler talk because we're now getting into the magic system. No,
Do
I'll
we
save
want to
that one.
save
Yeah,
it for the
I'm gonna
spoilers?
save.
Yeah,
I'll
Because
save
we're
that one.
basically at the
I
spoiler
was gonna say,
section.
wasn't that the last chapter for this section?
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
was.
So,
Um,
yeah. I guess with that as our segue, let's zip on over.
No, I'm not done. I still have a few more notes.
Oh.
How does slight critique of Galadon here, where he's like, "I have made the light Aeon," and he's like, "It's not as bright as it should be," and Galadon's like, "What do you mean? You tell me, Galadon. You saw these things in their prime.
But
How do
he
you
wasn't.
not
He
know?"
was one, he was a kid. Two, he doesn't know all of the Aeons and their modifiers and all that. He just sees, oh, the base one, and it's supposed to do the thing. He doesn't.
3. It was over 10 years ago. Just.
Those are all completely understandable. I'm just like.
In
And
defense
my
of
other-
Galadon, we ride.
Defense of Gal-
For Grump.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Anything else for this chapter set? Okay, then. Next time we're going to be doing the last 5 chapters of part 2. That will be chapters 50, 51, 52, 53, and 54. But currently it's time to head into the spoiler realm. So if you have not finished this book, the entire series, or potentially the entire Cosmere, then we recommend you stop here because it's likely we will talk about everything and anything. If you are up to date, feel free to stick around because it is likely that we will bring up details you may have missed or plot threads still yet to come. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, star, heart, or whatever it is on this podcast, and don't be afraid to comment your own thoughts and predictions. You can find us at CosmereConnectionsPod@gmail.com, at CConnectionsPod on Twitter, and we even have our own Facebook group. We would love to hear from you. But if this is where we must part, then my name is ReaderWarrior, and I've been joined by John,
Hello.
Kay,
How it going?
and our lovely guest, C.J of Cosmere Quandaries. Is there anything you would like to call out or pimp or make note of?
If you're a Stormlight fan, we're doing the death rattles every Tuesday. I've gone through the first 10 or so on TikTok and YouTube, and we're just going to go through one every single Tuesday until we're done.
Nice.
They're super fun.
Cosmere Quandaries, where can people find you?
Yeah.
TikTok and YouTube as Cosmere Quandaries. Technically Instagram also, but I don't love Instagram that much. It's fine, but I don't know. I've not vibed with it so far. But I like the TikTok. We do. I do a Sunday night live stream for Wind and Truth. So if you're reading the Wind and Truth chapters, me and Shandel Art and occasionally friends talk about those chapters every single week on Sunday, which gets you ready for Monday when the new chapters comes out.
Great.
Nice.
Can't wait. And don't forget, there's always another connection. Bye. And we're back! Spoilers!
Woo.
Okay, so we've got chapter 44 to start us off.
Right.
This was Sereni gives her talk to Raoden about, hey, I kind of killed your dad.
Just so brutal the way that she says it. It just every time. It's just I just get reminded of it. I'm just like, oh God, like you just.
It's like she intentionally puts it in the most blunt way possible, just like fire for effect.
Yeah.
Well, nobody likes him, right? Like, to her
Exactly.
knowledge, no one will be sad about this. There's literally one person in the entire kingdom, and he's supposed to be dead,
Right.
that would care about this fact.
Yeah. I mean, earlier we were making jokes about one person and, kind of relating to that. Okay, I'll move on.
Yeah. Probably for the best.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Then we had Ashley shows up, further proof that... and we lost him.
That was good. That was chef's kiss.
Thank you. Ashley shows up, further proving Sereni was not a real Elantrian, and he brings news that Tel'Rai is, in fact, the new king of Erelon.
None of which was a spoiler.
Nope. But I gotta go through all the chapters, because there's nothing in that chapter that I think was a spoiler.
Or foreshadowing.
Or, well, except for what we covered in this chapter set.
Right.
It is a little weird that, I don't know, I was wondering about this, why didn't she try to find the Princess Seon when she got to Elantris? Because Aishi should still be around, right? The Seon's, if he just died, in theory he would just go to somebody else.
Right, yeah.
Why doesn't she wonder what happened to Ayin?
It's possible she didn't know that it was his Sion. It might have been that he was using Aedan's Sion or something like that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's possible.
But that is a good point.
Yeah. And yeah, not Aishi, you're right. Aishi's her Seon. Whatever
yeah,
the
whatever his
Seon
name was.
Ayin or whatever.
Ayin.
Yeah.
Ayin.
Ayin.
Not to be confused with Eileen.
Come on, Eileen.
Sorry. sorry.
This is why me and
Be
Kay
careful.
can't
I'll
do an
start calling it
episode.
Elantris if you.
Oh.
Okay, chapter 45. This was Hrathen just like at his uttermost gloat level.
Which is wonderful on a dramatic reread, right? Because you're just like,
Oh.
well, oh man, buddy.
Oh, how the turns will table.
Meanwhile, he's just like walking along, like, you can't tell by the way I. No, I'm sorry, I won't do that anymore. Nobody
There
wants
was
to
a
hear.
line that was in the chapter. It called him like the warnings or something. And
Yeah,
it
that's
just threw me
the
off.
Fjordell money.
Ah, okay, that's what it was.
Yeah, that did sound really weird in my head. I'll give him 1,000 warnings. It's like, wait, what? Like little worms? Like little babies?
Is he talking about people?
Oh no! Stop, Brain! Stop! Oh.
Oompa Loompas.
It's a
That's
munchkin.
what they are, right? They've got to be Oompa Loompas.
Yeah.
I was thinking munchkins.
Just imagining little mini Hrathens.
Oh no.
Oompa. You will convert or we will kill you.
I was trying to come up with something. Follow the bloodstained road.
Oh. Yeah, but it's in some ways it's kind of proving Wern's point that Hrathen's job was never going to actually work, and he was always going to have to conquer. It's in this chapter. No, next. It's some chapter. It must be the next chapter when they talk about the merchants. No, 2 chapters from now. So I'll hold on to that. But that was fun foreshadowing, talking about the merchants outside the town.
Yeah. Then there's also Dio. It was him, which is steadfast and ironic.
Yeah, that's fair.
Considering, the steadfast Aeon is like the one that shows up and allows
Evanteo.
Evanteo, thank you. I knew it was Tio something.
I didn't know what name you were trying to pull out. Or
Trying to pull out the king's name.
He's the only other person
anything
who's got a
else?
Sion.
Anything else?
No.
It just goes to show.
Well, okay, the only
cell
other
phones
relevant
are
person
the real
who has a
problem
Sion.
with society.
Can't
Because if he
trust
didn't have
Well-
his cell phone, it would have taken him longer, and Sereni would have just gotten out. So what about that? Like, was Hrathen just really gonna wait on him to? I guess he was, but man.
Yeah.
I wonder if he would have
Yeah.
waited until like the last day. Like I'm guessing this was like day 3.
Yeah, 3 or 4 feels like it has to be.
So I feel like he would have waited till like the end of day 4. So like night has fallen, and then he calls, "I will save your daughter if you submit," and then it would have happened the next day.
Do you think he'd be willing to admit he has a Seon though? Because he was only using it to contact Wern and the poison dude.
He could go to Tauraiai and use his.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
But he probably wouldn't let him.
Or he could have just gone to Ashy since he knew that that one would have worked.
We don't know that he knows about Aishi.
Well,
Does he?
we know.
Sereni's moved
No,
with...
and Sereni doesn't exactly keep Ashi a secret at all.
No, but that
They've
doesn't
been out
mean
and about.
she's shown it to Hrathen. Like, it's not like they're best buddies hanging out playing poker on Saturdays.
No, but I'm pretty sure he could like see her and Ashy, or better yet, probably, hey, does she have a Sion? Yeah.
Also, like, his spies aren't worth their salt if they don't know that she has a Sion.
I mean, Delof was at the party.
That's true.
Okay.
I'm currently just trying to picture playing poker against the Malwish, and I don't feel like it would be a fun time.
Yeah, that would be difficult.
On the eyes.
Chapter 46. This is Raoden and Sereni getting that first step into the answer
Yes.
that will come in a few chapters later.
Yeah, so did anyone else
The
feel
city's
really
an AO.
dumb the first time? Like,
Honestly, the reread is really helping because I did not piece together that it was that map, and I was just like, simple, okay. Because now that I'm actually looking at the map and I can actually see, oh, it does fit the curvature of the mountains, and strangely, the sea is like a perfectly straight line across the coast.
Yeah, I didn't get it on my original read. This would have been this Mistborn and Elantris were both. I think I did Mistborn, Elantris, and Warbreaker, and maybe even the first little bit of Way of Kings before my brain really turned into like a Brandon Sanderson reader, like something somewhere in that journey. I went, oh, I'm gonna start seeing all of like you learn Brandon's like way of writing, and you go, it all opens up, and you start to see the pieces and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's
I'll
nothing.
say.
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
I'll say like I don't think I predicted Elantris. Definitely didn't do any of like the Mistborn books. But I'll say but like the secret projects, not that they were predictable, but I was able to guess aspects. Like I knew the rat was going to be the boyfriend. I knew the rat was. But like sometimes like I'll get two in my head. I thought that maybe like in Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, like maybe it was the cognitive realm and the physical realm, and it wasn't a direct overlay. But it's like, oh, Brandon can now mess with all the fun stuff. No,
I will occasionally
then-
get his red herring thing. You're supposed like in Rhythm of War, I was like, oh, Pattern's gonna be the spy way before Shalon thought Pattern was gonna be the spy. And so when she thought it, I was like, yeah, we got it. And then it's like, oh no one's the awesome, cool.
yeah,
Nice.
and that's where I struggle. And that's where I struggle with a lot of things nowadays. Where I'm like, am I being smart? Is this just what the show wants me to think, or am I completely overanalyzing? And so out of those three options, I have no idea what to think anymore in normal media.
The most recent example of that was that he changed a sentence in the prologue to not saying anything about what's in Wind and Truth, but there was a prologue. Shocker! I know Wind and Truth has a prologue.
How dare you?
I'm sorry, reader. I am going to spoil that for you. And he'd read
Next
a
thing
version
you're gonna
of
tell
it.
me is it's an interlude.
I wasn't going to say anything, but there is at least one interlude. There are chapters, even characters. They say things, lines of dialogue.
I'm gonna kick him.
But he changed a
I'm gonna kick
sentence
him.
in
So,
the prologue.
how dare he spoil everything?
And that change is like my galaxy brain is like, am I galaxy brain or am I peanut brain? And I don't know which one I am. And it's just like,
It's a big change in the prologue. I know exactly which one you're talking about. It is a big change in the prologue.
See, she just saying that to get to us, John. I don't know. She
I
could
mean,
be
you
trying
won't
to trick
even
us.
know what the change is, reader, because you didn't read the first prologue, so it doesn't matter to you.
Yes.
I remember very,
Yeah,
very
never know.
clearly the day that I discovered that there was a Hoyd in all of the books.
yeah.
And that was the day I completely became obsessed with all of this stuff. Like I had read through The Way of Kings the first time, but it was like shortly after it had come out, so it was like this big long gap before Words of Radiance, and I went back and I read all of the Wheel of Time series, and I was like, oh, I just finished this whole thing, like I need something a little lighter and whatever. And I was listening to Warbreaker, and Hoyd came in Warbreaker, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wait a
Wait a
minute. And I immediately went into Audible and looked up the chapter, and I'm like, and he's like, oh, but you can call me Hoyd. And I was like, what? So I busted out, the original Mistborn trilogy, and I was like frantically at work flipping through the chapters in these audiobooks looking for the chapter, and then I heard it there too, and I immediately went over to the other side of the shop, because I worked at a paint shop at the time, and found my buddy Steve, who I'd gotten to read these books as well, and so he knew like these stories, And I was like, dude, this is a thing. And he's just like, he kind of looked at me, he's like, really? And I'm like, yes. And then I Googled it. And I showed him, and that was when I discovered the 17th shard and like all of it. My whole world turned inside out that night. It's great.
There's a difference between discovering the Cosmere and like discovering the 17th shard.
Yeah, so I had a similar moment to John, but mine wasn't with Hoyd because I had already known that Hoyd was a recurring character, like fairly early on. I don't remember when I learned that. But my moment was when I was reading Words of Radiance when it came out, and I got to the end, and you have Zeth has
Would you like to
Nightblood. Would you like to destroy some evil? I was like, that's Nightblood. I immediately went to that's Nightblood. There's no way. I was like, it's Nightblood. There's no way. There's absolutely no way that's Nightblood. I was like, it is. It's Nightblood.
That's amazing.
See, I read Words of Radiance before I read Warbreaker, so it meant nothing to me.
See, and
yeah, and it's.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna super fun now. I'm doing my Oathbringer reread and catching the very slow, subtle hints as to who Azure is. Where like it's they're doing the same kata, and she's got a sword that doesn't make sense, and then then like the sword like separately in a Zeth one is like, oh yeah, whatever Var always said he was a bad swordsman or whatever, and I'm like, oh, it's fun to pick up on all those little pieces.
And her hair changes color. Did you catch that?
I did.
Okay, let's bring it back to.
And he's like, "Why would you put cloth on your arm? Is that like she's used to a shield or something?"
Yeah. Okay, but let's bring it back to. See, this is how we get lost.
God, I love this stuff so much.
This is how we end up in Stormlight.
Exactly.
All roads lead to Roshar.
All roads.
Eventually, it will be Silverlight, I'm sure, but for now, it's Roshar.
Yep.
Sereni, they find out,
we have
is
light
not
weaving,
Elantris.
which is pretty cool. Or no, we don't yet. That's 39. Never mind.
Not yet. Almost. And Sereni is kicked out of Elantris.
Very fast. It's just like, nope, you gotta leave right now. Why? We planned for a minute?
Well, and I love that Hrathen knew exactly when to be there to, like, snag her.
Well, it seemed to be 5 days perfectly, and so
he was
asleep.
also
right, but he was like
looking.
waiting there on the other side of the gate when Raoden drags her out. Like,
he was at the top of the wall screaming his prayer, and he's been looking for her. Like, he's been keeping an eye out for her every time he's been up on top of the wall. So I'm guessing he was on top of the wall and he saw her walking through the streets with Raoden, and then
well, there you go, making sense and
had enough time to climb down the wall and get to the door.
Oh, sorry. Clunk, 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 clunk. In his
right?
armor.
Chink, 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 chink.
Also,
That
I would
does
say,
change
like,
that night setting of like clink, clink, clink as he's walking through his armor all the time.
I mean, Sereni's in her like colorblind outfit, and then Hrathen's in his armor. This is a very colorful bunch. And like he knew exactly when she turned, so like he could have like 5 days from that exact hour. He knew exactly when she would change back.
Yeah, he's a planner, man.
He's a schemer. Okay. Chapter 47. You've got Serena kind of fighting against being taken out for a bit. Then we jump to her being at Caine's and being fed. There's the brief little comment that's a hint that the one brother is actually an Elantrian.
Mm-hmm.
Ahan is working with Telrai, so he's like, oh, he's there to gain us favors. No, he's turning traitor.
Yeah.
That scoundrel.
Yep. And then you got Sereni kind of calling her dad at the end and being like, but it was a trick, but I made a promise. Ah, curses.
Yeah, another one of those like scene skip moments. Like he seems I did not notice it at all the original time I read Elantris, and every time I reread, I pick up more on the like kind of way that he'll cut and then come back to a scene or come into a scene after something has happened, or just interesting from a writing perspective.
Yeah, actually, when I was listening to this chapter, because I do all my stuff through audiobook, I actually had to rewind it twice because I thought I had missed something. I'm like, wait a minute. When did she start talking to Aventeo? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else for 47?
I don't think so.
I mean, the only thing that's really... That was the one that's got actual hints in it with the Elantrian brother and Ahan. That's about it.
Yeah.
We're just gonna breeze on by that.
I mean, other than those two things, there's not really a whole lot.
Then we got chapter 48. Harathan goes to King Telrai, tries to trick him into buying him, but Telrai doesn't really want money, he wants power. And the only one that can give him a level of power now is the Wern.
Yeah.
Harathan
should have handled him better.
Well, you know, coulda, woulda, shoulda.
What is a king to a god?
Yeah, he certainly wasn't expecting things to change as much while he was in Elantris for his 5 days. In hindsight, maybe put a different priest in there for 5 days. You know, like don't make yourself the one that gets taken out, and you can still be the priest that heals them. You can pray for them, and then like you could curse them, curse Deloff.
Well, that was the original plan.
Bring him back out. Yeah,
I think that was the.
That's right. You're right.
But then he had his own crisis of faith, and he used it that way.
Gosh, would it have worked on Deloff with all his stuff?
I don't think so. Deloff would have just killed himself the first chance he had, I think.
Do you think so?
I'm wondering if it would have worked, like with all his magic stuff.
Well, the poison isn't necessarily magical, so he, you know, if it's just a mundane, you know, real world poison, he might not have resistance to that, although maybe that's built into the package. We don't really know for sure.
Yeah. But if he's invested at all, he would be resistant to poison.
That's true, maybe it would only last a couple hours instead of 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
But we also know Harathan is invested.
Yeah, but not nearly to that same extent. Although, now that you mention it, shouldn't that have changed the amount of time? Like, shouldn't there have been a difference between Harathan's duration versus Sereni's because of that?
Exactly.
It just depends on what it's doing, right? If it's just making you lose your hair and look different.
So maybe the body isn't even...
Depends on the type of investment. I mean, this stuff gets really weird.
They're saying poison, but like they've also said elixir. Like we're calling it a poison because it harmfully affects the body. I don't think it really is.
Well,
no, it's
in a sense.
Well,
and we know investiture only really defends against harmful stuff, which
I would
also
say it
includes
is
coffee.
harmful because it kills your hair, makes your hair fall out. That's
what
harmful.
If you want to be bald? What if you're The Rock or Aang?
But, well, like, for example, we know from the end of Oathbringer, from the epilogue in Oathbringer, when Hoyd is walking through, he had to, like, do something to, like, prevent his investiture from healing him. Because...
Yeah,
he did.
The end,
he suppressed his investiture in order to disguise himself. So, like,
it's like he punches himself in the face and knocks a tooth out to look like a beggar.
Yeah,
he convinces somebody to punch him. I remember that, but I don't.
Plucks his hair out. He has his hair plucked out as well. Like, part of his hair is plucked out. Like, he talks about how he needed to suppress his investiture in order to keep it from immediately healing him.
I don't have the books about. I don't remember that. I simply remember him getting the guy to punch him, and then him using breath to make the doll save the girl.
Well, yeah, and we see Brain Blazile do it too. You know, like he suppresses his biochroma in Warbreaker.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
True. Okay. Anything else for 48 then? Okay, now onto the fun one of 49. This is where they figure out how to fix the Aeons.
Woo!
It's strange to me that the base Aeon, Aeon, includes the coast and the mountain and the lake, but other ones have to like include dots for like the woods or the river. Why? I don't know why I'm asking, because we don't know. Nobody knows. Brandon might know. Maybe he knew 20 years ago. Like, why is just the coast and the mountainside and the lake the important ones?
Because you don't need a full entire map of the country. You only need the major landforms, which the major landforms in that case are the coastline, the mountains, and the lake.
You know who would know for sure? Aona and Sky. Oh, too soon?
Or they did.
They did.
Maybe they did. Who knows?
They definitely did. They're definitely dead. Like,
I don't know. We've seen that sometimes a shard invests themselves and then the magic system isn't directly what they wanted it to be.
they're still definitely dead. Like, Odium
Right.
definitely killed them.
They be spiritual corpses
Yeah.
at this point.
I seriously think that Sky and more so Aona like made this as like a kid language. Like she created a language as a kid and that ended up being the Aeons.
Oh. But then how would you explain the symbols
Not the
for
symbols, just the
forging for forge?
just the words specifically and their translation, not specifically the symbols.
Okay.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I like that. That's fun. I mean, why not?
I just find that Aeon Ace High 80 is hope. And I think maybe that was like a call for a friend she lost or something. I feel like there were
Are you
others.
saying AT is her friend? Was her friend?
Yes.
Which would make sense because Hoyd references him to being one of the kindest and gentlest people who took up, you know, a horrible power or whatever, in the hopes that it wouldn't change him. Yeah.
Yep.
It did.
So that does kind of make sense and is a great connection if it's true.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just hedging bets for when we finally get the next two books. Let's see. So, they also reference that you don't necessarily need to draw it with the finger, right? You can also use like a pen or something, or you can carve it into something.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw.
Well, we
when
knew
they
that.
were trying to. Yes, and we
or
saw
you can
that.
also make it out of something like wire or
Or, like,
any
in the
physical material.
But like when they, it said they carved it, and I'm comparing this directly to the button that Karada pressed to open the door.
Mm-hmm.
Do the Elantrians push investiture into the Aeon carving, and then that activates it, or does the carving itself have investiture linked inside of
No, I think that they push investiture into it. with intent. There has to be intent for the Aeon to activate. You can't just like brush up against it and have it activate without you wanting it to. Also, if you are not an Elantrian, you can't make it activate. So it
Okay.
has to be the Elantrian pushing their investiture into it and not the Aeon itself holding investiture.
Okay. Secondary question. Why doesn't the door attack Raoden anymore after this?
So
The pressure buildup
the
has been relieved
yeah,
But
so
in an
it's
explosion of
like
fire.
it's like if you have a faucet where the end of the faucet is capped, but it's still turned on slightly. Like it's constantly that pressure is pushing, and it slowly like starts to leak out the sides. That leaking out is like pressure onto Raoden, and once he is able to release it, you're taking that cap out, and so suddenly you have that big release of power, and then you don't have that pushing pressure anymore.
I think I'm still just trying to figure out why it went through him so much. I'm wondering if maybe because we
I
know
think it's
investiture gains
be-
sentience over time if there's a large amount, right?
I think it is because he was using the Aeons.
Yeah.
I think that is the reason.
That and
It's
he's
because he was actively using the Aeons.
yes, that and he's naturally a powerful Elantrian. Those two, by those powers combined,
They form Captain Cell. But we know investiture gains sentience over time. If there is no mind, it creates a mind, and specifically a large amount of investiture, right?
yeah, but I think it's gonna take longer than like it takes tens of thousands of years. I think.
But
Yeah.
The Rayo,
think-
to a certain extent, is or Shayode or whatever. I always forget the Hoy, whatever is taken the people, right? Shayode, right?
Yeah, the
It's
Shayode.
called the
Yes.
Shayode? There
Yeah.
we go.
yes.
The
And that's a
Reode is when
little
it
bit
works
of it.
correctly. The Shayode is when it makes them zombies.
No.
Well,
Okay,
not
cool.
zombies.
No. The Shayode is just the transformation. The
Rayo
Reode was
was
the
the-
Reode was the event that
Mhm.
happened 10 years ago.
That's
The
right.
apocalypse,
That's right.
the end of the world, the Ragnarok.
Okay.
But yeah, that, and I think Brandon has said something about like the land of Cell is, or no, Chris has made weird observations in one of her Ars Arcanum that the land of Cell is doing weird things that she wouldn't have expected. Yeah, I think Cell's just weird though because all the power is sitting in the cognitive realm instead of the spiritual realm, so it's like it's doing even weirder stuff than normal.
I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if maybe all of the devotion investiture has maybe gained some sentience to it. Because there is a lot of confusion on the router Aeon and how not only is it a router that allows all the investiture to come out and for all the Elantrians to use, but it is also transforming the Elantrians, seeking out people to become Elantrians, and doing a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm wondering if maybe one of those isn't actually involved in that process. Then we also see that when they fix the router Aeon, that makes everybody transform completely, so who knows? Hopefully we'll get answers.
Hopefully.
Um,
Have okay. This is a CJ headcanon that is not officially anywhere yet. But have y'all ever talked about the possibility of time dilation with
yes,
the amount of investiture sitting in the cognitive realm around Cell?
I have. Yes. I brought it up. I
Love it,
love
love
the
it.
theory. And I think that's why codenames are stupid is so young still.
Yeah, there's the two possibilities are like either he's changing the timeline dramatically, which is always possible. But I love the idea that you've stuffed a black hole level of investiture outside this planet, and now, yeah, we've got relative time relativity going on, which is why you have ancient Elantrians, like 300 years, like in Mistborn era, like your ancient Elantrians are walking around. You're like, wait, how are the Irie here? And like Raoden stuff is going on. Like it's weird. The time is weird with Cell.
I
Oh
agree.
yeah.
I
So
100% support
Time
that.
is weird in physics too, so.
yeah.
That's true.
So I thought this was interesting. So this is the comment that Chris made, which I was trying to find it that you were talking
Oh, yeah.
about. Is that she says that so she talks about how the overlap between language, location, and magic on the planet has become so integral to the system that subtle changes in one can have profound effects on how the door is accessed. So that's including language as well, not just location, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Indeed, I believe that the very landscape itself has become invested to the point that it has a growing self-awareness in a way unseen on other planets in the Cosmere.
Seems to imply why the chasm needed to be included in the Aeons.
Oh. That's
Also,
it. The chasm is just the planet's mouth and it's trying to sneeze.
Also, this is interesting in this earlier in that this same grouping. This is talking about how the powers were kind of discovered in a way. So it says, I believe that early on took an unconcerned approach to humankind, and society was shaped by the slow, steady discovery of the powers that permeated the landscape, which I just think is interesting because did they place the powers on the landscape? Is that what that is implying? Or is it just saying that they just took a while to understand it?
I think
Also,
the latter.
Yeah. But there is a quote that also is in this section that helps support reader your theory about the language being a language that they created, because it literally says the very language and alphabets used today across the planet were directly influenced by the two shards.
Nice.
See, what I'm imagining is like Aona was like an orphan or like lived in the slums and like maybe with Scott, and like to keep her happy, like they made like languages up.
That's amazing.
Percent. I'm gonna be right about that. We'll find out in Dragon's Tale.
Conservatively, 25 years?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, he said 10 years until the next Stormlight book, and assuming it's going to be like 1 year for each of them. That's
It's
15
not. It's going to be at
years.
least
No, it's going to be at
years for
least
each of
two.
them.
Yeah.
Probably closer to 2.5.
So
So we're looking at
years, so
2
that's
decades before the end of the Stormlight second half.
Not including Mistborn Era 4, whatever else he decides to write.
Secret
And
Project
Mistborn Era 5.
17!
Don't forget that there's 5 Mistborn eras now.
5?
Yep.
Well,
What's coming after
no.
Space Age?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. No. It's 3.
So
and
they're
then 4. He said 4 and then 5. He added one at like
Did he
C2E2 this year.
did he add
did.
the
The
steampunk,
cyberpunk.
the
Yeah,
cyberpunk,
the cyberpunk. Yeah,
this that he's been talking about?
he did.
Oh.
He's okay, because he's been talking about
I-
doing that for a while, and I wasn't sure.
That better be
if
a
he's actually-
one-off book, Brandon. Brandon, that
definitely
better be
not
a
gonna be.
one-off
3
book.
books.
No, it's probably gonna end up being
5.
I wouldn't be surprised. I was gonna say 4, like, Wax and Wayne ended up being 4, That wouldn't surprise me if he ended up doing that.
I think he's gotten it into his head that he can get to 16 this way. 16
Oh
total
my
Mistborn
gosh.
books.
I'm gonna kill him.
Which
That-
is
I
poetic.
can't.
That makes too much sense.
It
Right?
does. 16 Mistborn, 10 Elantris. Not 10 Elantris, 10 Stormlight. Oh no. Brandon better have like detailed notes and have like uploaded his brain into a computer.
I was gonna
He
say
does
somebody needs to
have-
figure out
he
how to make
does
this
have-
man immortal.
He does have some like very detailed notes.
He better have.
because of the fact that he had to pick up the Wheel of Time after Robert Jordan died, and
Yeah.
he had okay notes. Not great. They were not great notes. So he is very aware of the fact that, like, if he dies and someone else has to pick this up, he's like, I want to make sure I have very detailed notes about where this story is supposed to be going.
I just hope I live long enough to read them all. Like,
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, this is where my dissertation for next semester, and the people in the Nexus chat have already been like angry about it. I'm wanting to see if an AI can be filled up with an author's works and be able to correctly finish a story that they themselves didn't do. And so what I want to do is I want to load it up
Yeah.
with all of the
That's-
Mistborn, all of Brandon's works, all of the WOBs, and then
Oh,
the
God.
first 4 Stormlight Archive, and then see if it can write Stormlight 5.
please do
How
not do
close
this.
would-
Please do not do
No.
this.
Okay, I completely understand the worry of it, but imagine like the usefulness. We could see
No.
if it
no.
has the
No.
capability.
No.
Dude, Mr.
could finish-
Anti-Spoiler wants to write a spoiler robot. Stop it.
I want to see if it could, but it could finish like Mozart's lost works. We could see what would have happened if Robert Jordan did finish The Wheel of Time, or like hundreds of other.
Yeah, it's
We could
Scenarios where the
see
authors
a
never finished.
potential version of what may have been.
yeah.
Exactly. I'm not saying it is the definitive version, but I want to see if I can prove that an AI, and granted, Brandon has so much information that can be used to predict his writing style and what he would want to do, that I feel like it's kind of cheating to use his. It's like, think about the millions of WOBs we'd have available to us. And like, I don't want it to.
Dude,
Here,
you
give
gotta
me
be careful.
predictions on Stormlight 5.
Someday a time traveler is gonna come back and slice your head off with a katana made of
I created
light.
Skynet. You've been targeted for domination. Hi, hi, hi. Come on. But like, this is what I'm going to be doing next semester. I'm like, okay, can it predict all of Wind and Truth? No. Okay, I fill it up with part 1. Can it predict the rest of it? No. Okay, I give it part 2. Can it predict? At what point can it predict and write the rest of a story? I'm not saying I want it to be used to replace authors. I'm saying I'm wondering if it can be used to see a possibility of what the author might have.
Have you
written.
picked out your supervillain name yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody likes this, alright? Stop.
But technology, we
You
have
hurt
to find
my
out.
soul.
Why? Why do we have to find out, reader?
Because science is progression, and one day this information might be. A guy created an AI or a program that was used to see if Cheetos matched the same thing. It never worked, but then they found out, oh, this is actually really good at discovering cancer cells. I am not joking. That actually happened.
I do remember that. Yeah.
I'm not saying I wanted to replace authors. I'm very upset at Disney. I'm very upset at like all these.
He's mad
Things.
at Disney.
Well, have you seen Disney's trying to do this huge AI push right now? I don't want it to ever be used for that. I want it to be used as a recovery system of things that had been lost. Mozart's lost works, things he was never able to finish. Dr. Seuss stories that we know he wanted to write but never did. Things like that, not as a way to replace authors, but to figure out what an author would have written if he had finished.
Would you use
Literary
it to
Oppenheimer over here.
write the ending to the Game of Thrones series because he's never gonna finish it?
I gotta
There
finish
you
Game
go.
of Thrones before he
Use your
even
power
goes.
for good instead of evil and switch to George R.R. Martin.
Yeah.
It's the target is what makes it good and evil.
Yeah, twas ever thus.
Yeah. Okay, back to Elantris.
I think we've gone around the bend. I think we are ready to wrap it up.
I got a few more questions.
Oh, you have more,
Raven-
Reader?
I got a few. The voice of Oz is laughing at me. So when he does the healing Aeon, he has to specifically say a target. So I'm guessing there's just a giant dome of healing energy, unless you specify a person. And then he has to do power enhancer lines. What is the point of power enhancer lines? Why
Because
isn't Aeon not working at 100% efficiency?
that's the question. Why isn't the Aeon working at 100% efficiency, Reader?
No, it seemed to imply that it's not he was adding them to try to add more power, but like this is what it originally had.
Because we know that the Aeons aren't working at 100% capacity at this point. That's why he adds the extra power enhancers.
Okay, but hold on.
But
He actually has a point here because the existence of those known modifiers implies that they were needed at some point. So how do you half heal something? Okay, it just doesn't completely mend. If it's a bone, it doesn't completely knit together. Something
he
like that.
added a modification stipulating Galadin's body as the target, as well as all 3 power increasing marks. So first of all, there's 3 levels.
4. You could have a level without a power increasing mark.
That's true. So I'm just wondering, why isn't this Aeon operating at 100% efficiency?
But there is still that whole matter of, your
originally,
router.
Kay. Originally.
We know why it's not
The person
operating
who
at
drew it in the
100%.
notebook.
Okay.
The person who drew it in the notebook implies that the Aeon
I think-
originally.
Wait. I have a
I think
scenario.
It's because can I say
Go
what
ahead.
I'm going to say
Go ahead.
real quick? So I think it is because that different levels of sickness would require different amounts of power in order to heal them. If you just have a cut, you don't need the super powered Aeon to heal your tiny little cut.
Correct.
Like,
and
you could just use a lower powered Aeon
furthermore,
for that.
Using the 20 heal instead of the full restore.
Yeah.
Furthermore, adding those marks increases the complexity, which increases the likelihood of getting something wrong, which increases the likelihood of having not a good effect on your patient.
Okay. I'm just going to say, there's nothing bad about, we have seen there's nothing, and we've argued this before, I think, over healing being a bad thing.
Maybe.
And if Aeons can cause cancer.
Here's the other thing to think about, right? Let's say you break a bone, and maybe it's just a little fracture, so you only need a little bit of healing to make that reknit, right? Or maybe you completely fracture that bone and it's a nice clean break. You need a little more oomph to completely heal that, right? Because it's completely severed. Or maybe you've shattered your shin bone and you have to knit all of those little pieces back together. Or, whatever the next level, maybe you've completely pulverized that bone and it's just dust now and you need to regrow a bone completely, right? 4 levels. If you cast that, or if you use that 4th level of healing, regrow bone, on a bone that's only got a little bit of a fracture, now you have cancer.
It is
Why
one
is
of my
it-
favorite hopes for the Edge Dancers one day.
I'm
To
just
cause
wondering
cancer.
why is it the
Like,
original
I'm fighting you and I reach out. Oh, your hair's in front of your eyes and your fingernails are 7 feet long.
over use healing as an attack? Oh, that would be so
I'm saying.
cool.
Yep.
The
It's
only
I don't think-
growth, not the regrowth. Growth, right?
I don't think that would work for Stormlight. I think it would work for Elantrians, but not
Yeah,
for Storm.
because
don't think you can use growth on humans. I think you can only use growth on plants.
Okay,
Otherwise
bring
it would be
back to Elantris.
regrowth.
those
We will argue this in
That'd be weird.
Stormlight.
those reels and TikToks where it's like the Wizard Wars. I cast tungsten ball sack or whatever. You know?
Yes.
Okay. Imagine a person with growth having a wizard battle with someone who doesn't know they're pregnant, casting growth on the baby. I cast instant birth.
God.
My brain is a weird
Okay.
place.
Okay, moving on to my next question. Rayoden comments that he breaks off a toenail due to the laws of identity and all that. At the point where the toenail no longer saw itself as a part of Rayoden, then could it have been transformed?
Yes, I think so.
Actually, since the toenail itself is actually dead, i.e., you could cut it with a shard blade, it may not have a spiritual identity as being part of Rayoden to begin with.
But we know it does because it doesn't get affected by any of the Aeons.
Yeah, it must persist for long enough during these experiments. But
Which is probably just all of 10 minutes of them just, we got Aeons to work, let's do this.
yeah, I think it's also very fair to Brandon that he was not thinking about his identity connection rules when he had Rayoden break off a fingernail.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, it's still.
Yeah.
How is he breaking off this fingernail? I doubt they have toenail clippers. I really don't want to
Right.
think
Yeah,
about
but he's
not
got teeth,
regrowing.
right? Like,
But if you got a hangnail there and you're stuck with a
Ugh.
hangnail
eh.
forever, oh man, I
That
would.
suck.
No, thank you.
Okay. And my last question is, how big of a field do these illusions potentially have? We know that he puts it on his clothes and that covers his body. But how big of an area of effect could it
Well,
have?
an
What
arcanist
are
I know
you-
recently told me there are 3 power modification lines.
So on you're asking a full powered Elantrian, correct? That's what you're asking about. Not
Yes,
the like
a
low
normal
powered.
Elantrian just doing the Aeon Sheo without the 3 boosting lines.
Well, and maybe that one has 5 boosting lines. We don't know.
I think there's only going to be 3. He seemed to say only 3, unless the
Unless those 3 only apply to the
different
healing
numbers for
Aeon.
each one.
Yeah. Which would make sense, right? Because
Ugh,
if you're casting an
that'd
Aeon
be
that's
so
based on
confusing.
fire, and you know, the ones that boost water
No,
effects.
I'm going to say it's
Yes.
just 3 levels for each. I think that's the only, because
We don't know.
everything's so
We don't know,
confusing right
reader.
now anyway. We
don't know,
but
reader.
he doesn't. He says the 3 lines, but he doesn't say specifically it's only tied to this specific Aeon. So I'm guessing that until it's said otherwise, only all Aeons have 3 levels of boosted capabilities.
There's only 3 of them.
So to get back to your question, Raider, I think that you could probably make it fairly big, but I like maybe as big as like a room, but not as big as like a house or a city. Like I think that would be too big. Maybe a room, though.
Okay. Okay.
Just because I don't know if you would have enough, if they would have enough power for it to reach that far with the illusion. But I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
just
on Elantris, on Cell in Elantris, it is really interesting to think about because in theory, there's no limit to the power. It's just how much can you get to flow through your Aeon.
yeah.
That's
Which
really
is why the
interesting.
3 boosting ones are surprising to me, considering you've got a constant flux of unlimited power.
Well,
But-
here's
Unlimited.
here's the other thing that matters. Let's say that Elantrian isn't in Elantris. Maybe they're in Teod.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're going to need more power because they're farther away.
That's true.
I can't believe it took us that long to think of that.
Unless they make a new router Aeon. How
Well,
big of a...
But at this point in the Elantris timeline, that is not
I will say I'm really hoping in the next book Avantio still keeps his word that he is going to convert, and that part of at least some level of the king became Shu Derethi, but the people still decided against it. Or maybe he became Shu Derethi and then stepped down as king. I don't know. But that's all I got for this chapter set. Anybody else? Before we get stuck on another Rosharan sinkhole.
Roshargo round.
Roshargo round.
I want to ride the
He
show.
He could step down as king, and this would be a way for him to get around it, is that he converts to Shudireth and then steps down as king and allows him to take the throne.
Also, I feel like once they invade your country, probably all your contracts with them are null and void. That'd be my rule as king. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
I was thinking is, I'm like, we know they attack. Like, does he still keep his word after that? During that?
yeah, that's a good point. Good question.
Okay.
if only he was a better negotiator.
CJ, thank you so very much for coming along. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. I know it's been a bit chaotic today due to many things. But thank you so much for joining us. Yeah.
I loved it. Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you for coming.
And that's just about gonna cover it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us in our ramblings and predictions. This has been Cosmere Connections, and we hope to see you next time.
Good night.
Bye.
Right, well, I guess if you want to kick us off, we can get this thing rolling.
Sure.
Are
You know how our
recording?
format usually goes, correct?
CJ, do you know how our format
again?
goes?
Vaguely. I might need a little assistance.
So we typically do the first part, because I see the reader is chewing on something. So we typically do the first part is spoiler free. So what that means is that you can talk about anything up to this point in the book. You can't talk about anything after this book. Mistborn spoilers, did we determine that those are okay because we've already done Mistborn
I
in our
mean,
reread?
we haven't
think-
really had a lot of that, just because we're doing the books slightly out of order.
Yeah.
But if something does come up that ties to the first Mistborn trilogy, it's okay. We've already covered it in the show.
Yeah.
But still better to just be safe if you can and save it for the spoiler
Yeah.
section.
I can't think of any Mistborn connections that I would be dying to.
Yeah,
to
there's
make.
not a ton.
One would think. One would think.
So,
We'll get there somehow.
and then we have the second half of the show is the spoiler section. So this is where you can talk about anything and everything Cosmere related, any spoilers you want to talk about, anything you want to mention, whatever. Usually we end up in Stormlight
Hopefully-
because we always end up in Stormlight. Everything
It's
ends in
everybody's
Stormlight.
Hopefully
favorite, pretty much.
focused on this book. Hopefully focused on
You know,
these
Or at least
chapters, not
tangentially
just-
related to.
They need to be. They should be tangentially related to these chapters. So like,
Of course, that doesn't stop us from occasionally stopping on Star Wars or West Wing either. So
In that section, Wind and Truth, preview
No.
chapters.
no.
Cool.
yeah, that's
No,
like the one exception.
nothing
Reader
that
will hang you
isn't-
from your toenails. if you spoil anything from an unreleased publication, and I haven't been following
Totally
them
fair.
because I would rather just binge it all in one go. So
I
Totally fair.
have read some of them, but not all of them.
Yeah.
So,
I
but
got my hand right over the mute button.
I'm not gonna say
Word.
anything. But yeah, so nothing that is unpublished, so that includes anything that Brandon has done as like a reading of an unpublished chapter.
but in the
Totally.
spoiler section, wobs are okay.
Yeah. But wobs are
Wobs
okay.
are fine.
Yeah.
Threnody, for whatever reason, that word conjures music to me, like,
Yeah.
conceptually.
Mhm.
Maybe it's
Yeah.
because it's quasi rhymes with melody. I don't know.
So a threnody is a song or poem or speech that mourns the dead.
Oh.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
A lament. Yep. I'm gonna regret opening Google just there because that's just gonna be the last little bits of Wi-Fi I had.
That sounded like such an ominous laughter.
That's the laugh of the Wi-Fi gods.
I was so proud.
the
My
laughter of the
daughter
Wi-Fi
did a
gods.
like Mario party in real life, and the like mini game she had to do was anime villain laughter. She got up in front of a crowd of like 700 people and just went, and it was beautiful. So
Nice.
this little 8-year-old
Fantastic.
girl just cackling at the top of her lungs.
I love that for her. That is fantastic.
Adorable. Ironic, we have such an anime focus when I feel like this episode has a direct anime reference.
It does.
It does?
Have you guys not seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
Nope.
Nope.
Not at all.
No.
Although there is an
I've
anime
heard
reference in my
of.
notes.
I tried to watch like the first episode and I couldn't get into it.
Oh no, I dislike JoJo. Don't put that
Okay.
in. But
Sorry, it's
very
been-
mean.
it's been
It was
recorded
me,
now.
Dio, was heavily memed for a good while in a lot of anime communities. And what is the one Seion that pops up?
It's say on Dio. Sure.
Yeah.
Or Dio, or I don't know. I didn't listen to the graphic audio, so my pronunciations are probably going to be off today.
That's okay.
It's literally D-I-O, so
Yes.
spelled the exact same way. That's why if you check podcast notes, you'll see exactly the reference I make.
Well, no one else will get your reference at all on this.
Somebody will.
But
Somebody will.
given the way that words are pronounced on Cell, it would be Dio.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I
Yeah.
was like, wait a minute,
Yeah. It's okay though. We
Which
don't
no
we
one
don't make a
told.
big fuss about the pronunciation because everybody else calls him Telrai and it's Telri and it's Telrai.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no
Just-
one told Michael Kramer that when they had him read The Hope of Elantris. Which makes
Yeah,
me smile
right.
every time.
the other one I hear all the time is Ash, but it's Aishi.
Mm-hmm. Well, Michael
Yeah.
Kramer called him Rowden. Rowden walked into the room and said, "Hello, Ash. What's going on?"
It
Draw!
drives me
Sounds like a Texan.
listening to Michael Kramer read Homo Elantris kills me every single time I listen to it.
Oh man.
I'm like, oh
Yes.
god, like, why did you do this? Like, they're so like they're all like different pronunciations for every single like name. It's like,
Actually, I noticed something today. I'm going through Stormlight Archive again, and I finished Way of Kings today. And you know how that last chapter of the audiobook, Kate Redding, totally pronounces Sadius? They fixed it. They went back and fixed it.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I noticed that today. I was like, hey, when did that happen?
that is so nice because they generally don't fix anything in the audiobooks.
I was kind of taken aback by that. Or if they do, they release it as like a 10th anniversary edition or something.
And it's another Audible credit because why not?
Right.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Okay, everybody ready for the actual episode, though?
I
Yeah.
guess reader.
Round two.
No, I suppose.
Ding!
Well, it's more so I'm wondering if the Wi-Fi gods are gonna come back to smite me later.
Probably.
I'll just burn
They
a
see me
prayer. It'll be fine.
trespassing.
Yep.
Okay. I'm trying to make jokes because Swiggity's gone and he was always the funny one.
For clarity,
I look.
he's not dead. He's just unavailable today.
Freaking is
He's no
gone.
longer with us.
He's
He
gone
just
to the
couldn't-
Trampoline
here.
Halls.
He just couldn't join today.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And cut. Okay, pee break.
Yeah. Quick break for drinks, bathroom.
I was trying to think, what's the most spoilery sentence I could come up with? Like, what do you think will happen when Sazed, who took up the Shard of Harmony, regrets the death of Vin as he faces down Taravangian, who has claimed the Shard of Odium, while he is contemplating the contest with Dalinar for the champion?
As Kelsier, I mean
Yes, as Kelsier is pursuing them within the role of Thydakar, leader of the Ghost Bloods.
Yeah. The fact that
There are some
Brandon
pretty
is
spoilery sentences out there.
I'm kind of upset Brandon is naming Aerith 3 Ghost Bloods. Like, that doesn't completely spoil Stormlight Archive.
I was having this discussion. What would you spoiler tag if you were going to make the sentence, Kelsier, leader of the Ghost Bloods? What would you spoiler tag that?
Mistborn era, specifically, what's the last one? Lost Metal. That's what I would tag it.
Yeah. Or you can just be safe and just save it for Aerith 3.
I would say Lost Metal.
Lost
Spoiler
Metal, if
tag
you
it
want to
for
be
Lost Metal because that's when it is officially confirmed that he is the leader of the Ghost Bloods. It is implied that he is the leader of the Ghost Bloods at the end of Rhythm of War, but the
But that also
confirmation is
reveals.
during Lost Metal.
But that also confirms and spoils the fact that Kelsier is alive. Up to that
Correct.
point.
Correct. But if you think that Kelsier is dead, you're not even gonna think about it. The possibility that he might still be alive.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
I
I
was
think I come down to Lost Metal is probably the most logical. I think it gets weirder if hypothetically it starts getting also revealed in like if like Rhythm of War hints at it, if Wind and Truth were to confirm it also, then it gets a little odd because it's like, oh, am I spoiling both of those stories now at the same time? Like there is a like to say he's the leader of the Ghost Bloods does spoil a little bit of the tension in, or at least it changes the tension in Words of Radiance onward.
That's why the Shardcast, the 17 Shard people, they only just referred to him as Thydakar and pretty much everything relating to Ghost Bloods.
because honestly, at least in my opinion, Thydakar is in essence a different character than Kelsier is,
Yeah.
than the Kelsier that we know.